Nicholas II was the last emperor of Russia, ruling from the 1st of November 1894 until his forced abdication on the 15th of March 1917. His reign saw the fall of the Russian Empire from being one of the foremost great powers of the world to economic and military collapse, due to the Khodynka Tragedy, anti-Semitic pogroms, Bloody Sunday, the violent suppression of the 1905 revolution, the execution of political opponents and his perceived responsibility for the Russo-Japanese War. He was given the nickname Nicholas the Bloody by his political enemies. Russia suffered a decisive defeat in the Russo-Japanese War, which saw the annihilation of the Russian Baltic Fleet at the Battle of Tsushima, loss of Russian influence over Manchuria and Korea, and the Japanese annexation of South Sakhalin. The Anglo-Russian Entente, designed to counter German attempts to gain influence in the Middle East, ended the great game between Russia and the United Kingdom. As head of state, Nicholas approved the Russian mobilization in late July 1914, which led to Germany declaring war on Russia on the 1st of August. It is estimated that around 3.3 million Russians were killed in World War I. The Imperial Army's severe losses and the High Command's incompetent management of the war efforts, along with the lack of food and other supplies on the home front, were the leading causes of the fall of the Romanov dynasty. Following the February Revolution of 1917, Nicholas abdicated on behalf of himself and his son, and he and his family were imprisoned. In the spring of 1918, Nicholas was handed over to the local Ural Soviet with the approval of Lenin. Nicholas and his family were eventually executed by the Bolsheviks on the night of 16-17 July 1918. The recovered remains of the imperial family were finally reinterred in St. Petersburg in 1998. In 1981, Nicholas, his wife and the children were canonized as martyrs by the Russian Orthodox Church outside Russia, located in New York City. On the 15th of August 2000, Nicholas and his family were canonized as Passion Bearers, a title commemorating believers who face death in a Christ-like manner, by the Russian Orthodox Church within Russia. Family background: Nicholas was born in Alexander Palace, St. Petersburg, Russian Empire, the eldest son of Emperor Alexander III and Empress Maria Feodorovna of Russia. He had 5 younger siblings: Alexander, George Sr., Michael and Olga. Nicholas often referred to his father nostalgically in letters after Alexander's death in 1894. He was also very close to his mother, as revealed in the published letters to each other. His paternal grandparents were Emperor Alexander II and Empress Maria Alexandrovna of Russia. His maternal grandparents were King Christian IX and Queen Louise of Denmark. Nicholas was of primarily German and Danish descent, his last ethnically Russian ancestor being Peter the Great. Nicholas was related to several monarchs in Europe. His mother's siblings included Kings Frederick VIII of Denmark and George I of Greece, as well as the United Kingdom's Queen Alexandra. Nicholas, his wife Alexandra, and Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany were all first cousins of King George V of the United Kingdom. Nicholas was also a first cousin of both King Haakon VII and Queen Maud of Norway, as well as King Constantine I of Greece. Nicholas and Wilhelm II were in turn second cousins, once removed, as each descended from King Frederick William III of Prussia, as well as third cousins, as they were both great-great-grandsons of Tsar Paul I of Russia, in addition to being second cousins cousins through descent from Louis II, Grand Duke of Hessen by Rhine, and his wife Wilhelmine of Baden. Nicholas and Alexandra were also third cousins, once removed, as they were both descendants of King Frederick William II of Prussia. In his childhood, Nicholas, his parents and siblings made annual visits to the Danish royal palaces of Fredensborg and Bernstorff to visit his grandparents, the king and queen. The visits also served as family reunions, as his mother's siblings would also come from England, Germany and Greece with their respective families. It was there, in 1883, that he had a flirtation with one of his English first cousins, Princess Victoria. In 1873, Nicholas also accompanied his parents and younger brother, 2-year-old George, on a 2-month, semi-official visit to England. In London, Nicholas and his family stayed at Marlborough House as guests of his Uncle Bertie and Aunt Alex, the Prince and Princess of Wales, where he was spoiled by his uncle, Zesarevich. On the 1st of March 1881, following the assassination of his grandfather Tsar Alexander II, Nicholas became heir apparent upon his father's ascension as Alexander III. Nicholas and his other family members bore witness to Alexander II's death, having been present at the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg, where he was brought after the attack. For security reasons, the new Tsar and his family relocated the primary residence to the Gatchina Palace outside the city, only entering the capital for various ceremonial functions. On such occasions, Alexander III and his family occupied the nearby Anyushkov Palace. In 1884, Nicholas's coming-of-age ceremony was held at the Winter Palace, where he pledged his loyalty to his father. Later that year, Nicholas's uncle, Grand Duke Sergei Alexandrovich, married Princess Elizabeth, daughter of Louis IV, Grand Duke of Hessen by Rhine, and his late wife Princess Alice of the United Kingdom, and a granddaughter of Queen Victoria. At the wedding in St. Petersburg, the 16-year-old Zesarevich met with and admired the bride's youngest surviving sister, 12-year-old Princess Alex. Those feelings of admiration blossomed into love following her visit to St. Petersburg 5 years later in 1889. Alex had feelings for him in turn, but she was a devout Lutheran who refused to convert to Russian Orthodoxy, eventually writing to Nicholas in 1893 to tell him that they could not marry. Eventually, in 1890, Nicholas, along with his younger brother George and their cousin Prince George of Greece, set out on a world tour. Although Grand Duke George fell ill and was sent home partway through the trip, Nicholas visited Egypt, India, Singapore, and Bangkok, receiving honors as a distinguished guest in each country. In April 1891, while traveling through the city of Otsu, Japan, Nicholas was the victim of an assassination attempt. The incident cut his trip short, yet he was present at the ceremonies in Vladivostok commemorating the beginning of work on the Trans-Siberian Railway. In 1893, Nicholas traveled to London on behalf of his parents to be present at the wedding of his cousin, George, Duke of York, to Mary of Teck. Queen Victoria was struck by the physical resemblance between the two cousins, and their appearances confused some at the wedding. During this time, Nicholas had an affair with St. Petersburg ballerina Matilda Szynska. Despite being heir to the throne, however, Nicholas's father failed to prepare him for his future role as Tsar. He attended meetings of the State Council. However, as his father was only in his 40s, it was expected that it would be several years before Nicholas would take the throne. Sergei Witt, Russia's finance minister, saw things differently and suggested to the Tsar that Nicholas be appointed to the Siberian Railway Committee. Alexander Alexander argued that Nicholas was not mature enough to take on serious responsibilities, to which Witt replied that if he was not introduced to state affairs, Nicholas would never be ready to understand them. Alexander's assumptions about living a long life and having years to prepare Nicholas for becoming Tsar would be proven wrong, as by 1894, Alexander III was suffering from ill health. Engagement, accession and marriage. In April 1894, Nicholas joined his uncle Sergei and Aunt Elizabeth on a journey to Coburg, Germany, for the wedding of Elizabeth's and Alex's brother Ernest Louis, Grand Duke of Hesse, to the mutual cousin Princess Victoria Melita of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. Other guests included Queen Victoria, Kaiser Wilhelm II, the Empress Frederick, Nicholas's uncle, the Prince of Wales, and the bride's parents, the Duke and Duchess of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. Shortly after arriving in Coburg, Nicholas proposed to Alex, and she rejected his proposal on the grounds that she could not convert to Orthodoxy. After the wedding, however, the Kaiser took her aside, telling her that it was her duty to marry Nicholas and convert, as did Elizabeth, who voluntarily converted to Orthodoxy in 1892. After Nicholas proposed to Alex for a second time, the two became officially engaged on the 8th of April 1894. For their parts, Nicholas's parents were reluctant to give the engagement the blessing, as Alex had made poor impressions on her visits to Russia, and only gave the consent after it became clear that Tsar Alexander's health was deteriorating. Queen Victoria had also been initially opposed to the match, as while she had no objections against Nicholas personally, she had a dislike of Russia. That summer, Nicholas travelled to England to visit both Alex and the Queen. The visit coincided with the birth of the Duke and Duchess of York's first child, the future King Edward VIII. Along with being present at the christening, Nicholas and Alex were listed amongst the child's godparents. After several weeks in England, Nicholas returned home for the wedding of his sister, Ksenia, to a cousin, Grand Duke Alexander Mikhailovich. By that autumn, Alexander III was dying. Upon learning that he would at least be able to survive for a fortnight, the Tsar had Nicholas summon Alex to the imperial palace at Livadia. Alex arrived on the 22nd of October and the Tsar insisted on receiving her in full uniform. He told his son on his deathbed to listen well to Witt, his most capable minister. 10 days later, Alexander III died at the age of 49, leaving 26-year-old Nicholas as Emperor of Russia. That evening, Nicholas was consecrated by his father's priest as Tsar Nicholas II, and, the following day, Alex was received into the Russian Orthodox Church, taking the name Alexandra Fyodorovna with the title of Grand Duchess and the style of Imperial Highness. Nicholas may have felt unprepared for the duties of the crown, asking his cousin and brother-in-law, Grand Duke Alexander, "What is going to happen to me and all of Russia?" Though perhaps underprepared and unskilled, Nicholas was not altogether untrained for his duties as Tsar. Throughout his reign, Nicholas chose to maintain the conservative policies favored by his father, while Alexander III had concentrated on the formulation of general policy. Nicholas devoted much more attention to the details of administration. Leaving Livadia on the 7th of November, Tsar Alexander's funeral procession, which included Nicholas's paternal aunt Queen Olga of Greece, and the Prince and Princess of Wales, arrived in Moscow. After lying in state in the Kremlin, the body of the Tsar was taken to St. Petersburg, where the funeral was held on the 19th of November. Nicholas and Alex's wedding was originally scheduled for the spring of 1895, but it was moved forward at Nicholas's insistence. Staggering under the weight of his new office, he had no intention of allowing the one person who gave him confidence to leave his side. Instead, Nicholas Melissa's wedding to Alex took place on the 26th of November 1894, which was the birthday of the Dowager Empress Marie Feodorovna, and court mourning could be slightly relaxed. Alexandra wore the traditional dress of Romanov brides, and Nicholas a hussar's uniform. Nicholas and Alexandra, each holding a lit candle, faced the palace priests. A few minutes before 1 in the afternoon, they were married.